All right. All right. Operating a network. I kind of want to set the bar here a little bit, and I think everyone's kind of set the bar pretty high, for the last couple of presentations and even last week. So great job on that. As I go through my slides, there's kind of a flow there, and I'm going to talk about, what it would take to potentially, operate a broadband program, from like the foundations, that things that you might need, and into actually executing on that. Yeah, next slide. So last week, or the last time around, we had a lot of great presentations, and there's a couple points about what is a network. We talked about the access network, the middle mile, and the backhaul. I kind of want to take that another layer down to kind of get into some of the context. And there's some visuals here for everyone, but at the end of the day, it's about inside and outside plant. And outside is it's pretty self-defined, right? Outside plant being anything outside of a building or a facility. But I would say that a lot of what we've talked about so far in the last couple sessions has been the fiber in the ground, the splice cables on the poles. That's all that outside plant equipment that makes broadband happen. There's also the inside plant, and that's everything that comes within the buildings and facilities that we have across the state. That could be just the patch panels, or the routers and switches, and the power systems that make everything run. So I kind of wanted to kick it off with just some context around what it really takes to operate, and what that visually looks like from a bird's eye view down. All right, now that we have a kind of a basic understanding of inside and outside plant, what some of the first things that you need to put together is put together a framework of how you want to operate, and a framework being what processes and procedures and what industry standard that you want to use that drives those processes and procedures. NoaNet specifically, and myself, is an ITIL service management shop, and it's the Information Technology Infrastructure Library. There's many frameworks out there. At the end of the day, they're all very similar, but they just help guide you in actually how you get work done. For your project managers and things like that, you understand like the project PMBOK, things like that. But without a framework, right, you can't. If you see my picture over here, like, you can't finish a house without a framework. You can't put the floor in. You can't put the bathrooms in, right? The same thing goes for operations, right? Without some guiding principles, you can't get work done. So whenever you're putting together maybe a broadband program, or you're looking at to engaging with providers, just understand that there has to be a framework in place. Next thing I think is really critical into operating a network is, as an operations director, right, I have to have a really good understanding on how work flows through the business. The business, businesses are driven by inputs and outputs, and at the end of the day, everything comes in the operations. So in order for me to support the business, I have to be able to influence the inputs within the business. As far as buying, onboarding a new customer, or building a new cell site, or laying new fiber in the ground, regardless, there's a flow, and I have to be able to support that. So I think it's really critical to kind of figure out where those mechanisms are within your business, so that way you know where to put controls in place. Sorry. The next key point, of operating is, I would call, service level management. And actually, sometimes I actually like to refer, if you read that backwards, it's managing the level of services we provide, right? And this is really the backbone of operations. And I've heard a few people talk about it already, as far as establishing service level agreements with your ILECs or your providers. Right now, the service provider has to establish those SLAs with their customers, whether they're service-based or customer based or circuit based, right? They could be many different things. But what's important is that that service provider has to underpin those SLAs, right? Meaning they have to be able to adhere or reach those targets or those agreements with their customers. And as you can see here, you can visually see here on the right there that I kind of depicted that on how those operating level agreements, right, underpin those service level agreements. So, an operating level agreement would be like as you can see, you got to be able to respond in 30 minutes, or if you sell a customer a 1 hour response time or a 4 hour response time, you have to be able to adhere to that. So this is really the backbone of operations. And I would say also in the business of being in the middle mile, in being in the business of middle mile, I think it's really critical, even from my time being in NoaNet, where let's just say you have a fiber break, right? And you dispatch a field tech, and that he gets there and he hooks up the equipment to an optical device that figured out where the break, and you come to find out that the break is potentially on a provider's network. That's where some of these service level agreements come in place, where you can push those, because right at that point in time, you're at the mercy of that provider and that agreement that you have with them to get things moving quickly. And if you don't have anything in place, then sometimes it can be struggling. So I think it's really important to kind of understand where this fits in your business and how you potentially leverage just agreements with providers, or interlocal agreements are used commonly. I'm seeing here in Washington State. So those are that would be another service level. So at the end of the day, this is kind of a basic backbone of operations if you haven't got anything in place yet. So we got a basic understanding of the network in the context. We have established a framework that we want to use. We understand how work flows through the business. Now you can kind of put together your organization. And here is an overview of what an organization, a structure could look like in an organization, right? You have the NOC. In operations, there's multiple functional entities, right? And how that operational entity engages the rest of the business between network engineering, infrastructure, HR, sales, all that. So it is an intertwined, complex organization, but you can see here, you can kind of visualize that. You can see the NOC there. They use a tiered model, and then the field services team, and also our service assurance team that makes sure that we're delivering those services as we agreed.
Jeff, I want to pause on this one for just a second. Just to note, we heard a lot of our panelists say NoaNet does our NOC. Just to comment that these don't all have to be done by the same organization.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So these can be broken up based on the specific business model that someone is operating under.
Yep. And let me know if there's any chats. I got a full screen right now. So.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, this is just one structure. It just depends on the business requirements, and depending on how big or small the entity is. But basic structure is your network operations center and probably some sort of field dispatch center. All right. And I thought I hit next. All right. Well, now that I've kind of went through, the foundations of, what you probably need to have in place, the framework, the understanding, I kind of want to go into some of the execution of how to operate. And I would say right here, you're the NOC, which everyone refers to it is, and this is what I've always, said throughout my career, as I've managed and helped build these entities, is that this is your insurance policy. At the end of the day, the NOC is your 24/7 shop that has the eyes and ears on the network. They're there to protect the company. They're there to protect the customers, right? They're there. So as I've told my staff that, why we're here, right? We wouldn't be here without the customers. We wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for the customers, right? So this is the insurance policy for your organization. So what does the network operations center look like? To be honest with you, a network operations center could be very large to just a few people. If you see here in the left-hand corner, this is actually a picture of AT&T's Global Network Operations Center. As you can see that they have a lot of real estate and a lot of screens. But also, if you look at the bottom two pictures, right, it could be something more simple, right? But they all have the same thing in common, right? Is they're all the 24/7 shop, and they're watching the network. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. So moving more into a support model for the NOC, I would say that when building a NOC, or when engaging a NOC, you kind of need a common thread, or a common a way to drive to a common end. And there's 4 critical aspects. It's network management, about managing connectivity or devices. And some of those things are about 24/7 awareness, service level agreements, maintenance, and escalations. Customer care is another critical aspect of the NOC support model. Making sure, are we being clear and concise in our messaging to the customers? Are we troubleshooting their issues, even though they're not our problem? Right? And I think that's a critical aspect of a business, of a support team, right? Is not being not being in that state of mind where it's not my problem. You should call this provider or whatnot, right? You're calling us for a reason, and regardless, I think we should, teams like this should go above and beyond to support. And systems, right? Do we have the right systems in place? And are we making them automated in a way where things are easier for the team to get done? So like I said, there's just 4 critical aspects that have these common drivers, communications, documentation, and MTTR at the end of the day. So this slide here is really that support model in action, right? Is you can kind of see like what drives the business, and that's SLAs, right? For operations, that's the backbone. And you can see here is as we respond to issues on the network, it kind of works through a tiered environment, and the idea is to push knowledge to the front of it's as close as the issue as possible, right? And if you can kind of look here, you can see how you got your tier 1, right? Is they take the call, they troubleshoot. If they can't resolve it, then they pass it on to the next tier, and then so on. But the idea is to push as much knowledge to the front line, so that way you can free up or have your more experienced engineers working on other things. But like I said, SLAs drive a lot of these escalations. Whether it's a 911 issue or a TSP coded circuit. That's a program with the FCC for qualifying customers, or just high priority customers. So this is kind of a visual of how work flows through the support model. I think it kind of adds some context on how the NOC gets things done. Your toolbox. I mean, this is a critical piece of operating in networks. You got a lot of tools out there, depending on the size. You need some fault management. You need to be able to see environmentals and alerts when they happen. You gotta be able to look at network performance. Sometimes that's a miss in some organizations as far as looking at trends. Service level views. A lot of times service level views are kind of like the last thing an organization will build upon. because you have to have the foundation first. Customer and circuit information, outside plant information. And I would say probably the most important piece of your toolbox is probably your ITSM workflows or your ticketing system. Your ticketing system will drive and tie a lot of this information together. So you select on a customer, and everything about that customer populates in the ticket. There's some of the stuff that we've been working on here to kind of streamline, when alarms happen, and it's immediate customer, like, okay, who's this customer, where are they at, things like that. So, but the problem with this is that, and it's kind of segue me into my next slide, is over 20 years, right, this toolbox just grows and grows and grows and grows. And a lot of times you find yourself swivel chairing between tool sets. You find yourself just almost overwhelmed. I think really what we have to remember is, what we need to start focusing on is, how do we consolidate that view, right, that over the top. And just go to my next slide. I hit it already. So that's really that single pane of glass, and that's been your SPOG. That's been the terminology I've been using in the industry for a while, is your single pane of glass, right? It's preventing the swivel chair. It's consolidating the alarming systems and the circuit information into one-stop shop, so that way you can have data at your fingertips. And I think that's so critical to supporting our customer experience. And this is actually my last slide. One thing I'll leave you with today is, from an operations perspective, and also anywhere else in the business, is be the voice of the customer, right? At the end of the day, our customer expects a service, and they expect it on, right? I think a lot of times we get lost in we get stuck between is the network up versus the service is degraded, versus customers are waiting on hold, or it takes 60 days to deliver my service. And that's why we should focus on, it's all about the customer experience, and it's about having a strong pulse on that end-to-end journey. So questions and answers.
That was really great, Jeff. I really appreciated the picture of like AT&T's NASA room. I mean, it looked like they were going to space for their NOC, but then also down to a room of computers. It doesn't have to be this huge global network thing. But and I was also, this made me think about Bruce McDougall's slide from earlier that had the different aspects of running a network. And he kept saying it's infrastructure, or it's construction. It's constructing infrastructure. Like, it's not that scary. And I think some of the stuff that you just were discussing are some of the things that feel really scary for folks who are outside of the broadband world. Mm-hmm. Is this part that makes a little bit less sense if you're not in the tech world. So I think that was a great overview, and I think it's good for Washington's communities to know that there are resources out there to handle that kind of stuff, and it's not just NoaNet, but you can outsource NOC services. So I really appreciate that.